The first is Sue J. Sokol. She is an activist and a writer of speculative and interstitial fiction. A former legal services lawyer from New York City, she immigrated to Montreal in 2004, where she currently works as a social rights advocate. Sue's debut novel, Cycling to Asylum, was longlisted for the 2015 Sunburst Award for Excellence in Canadian Literature of the Fantastic. Her short stories have appeared or are upcoming in The Future Fire, Spark, a creative anthology, the TTF 10th Anniversary Anthology, Glittership, an LGBTQ science fiction and fantasy podcast, Glittership, Year 1, and After the Orange, published by B Cubed Press. Sue also curates and participates in literary events in Canada and elsewhere, and has served as a panelist for the Conference on Canadian Content in Speculative Arts and Literature at the Blue Metropolis Bleu Literary Festival, and most recently at the 75th Annual World Science Fiction Convention in Helsinki. Sue J. Sokol.
Okay, hi. Bonne soirée. Merci d'être venu, tout le monde. I am going to read from Cycling to Asylum. It's a story about a family who has to flee the United States. They cross the border into Quebec by bicycle, and they make a claim for refugee status. The book was published in 2014. When I first came up with the idea in 2008, I had a fear that people wouldn't believe that it was realistic. So I decided that it should be a science fiction novel. So that's what I did. And I even had this crazy idea that Montreal would declare itself a sanctuary city, which it then indeed did that 2.5 years after my book was published. So that was kind of cool. So I'm going to be reading from actually the middle of the story where they're actually crossing the border. And the book is written from 4 different perspectives of 4 family members, including 2 children. And it's the one place in the book where you get all 4 characters' perspective on what's going on. I'm going to be starting with the most naive, youngest perspective, that of Simon, who's 9 years old, and then Siri, who's 12, then Janie, who's an adult, and then Lake, whose perspective is the most fraught because he was the one who was most damaged and is in danger and so forth. So I'm going to do just an excerpt from those 4 chapters, if I'm able. It turns out that I can see the borderline between the USA and Quebec, even though it's supposed to be invisible. Daddy warned me not to expect it to be like on a map, where there's a thick black line between the 2 countries, but I didn't need Daddy to tell me that. I mean, all lines are invisible because they only have 1 dimension, length. The thing you see on a map isn't a line at all, but more like a long, very skinny rectangle. I wonder if crossing the border will change me, if once I'm on the other side, I'll become different, like in a parallel universe. The other thing I wonder is what the animals will be like on the other side. Can the animals sense the borderline somehow? Will they act different in Quebec? Siri thinks I'm being dumb, that animals don't care about national boundaries and stuff, but I know that. I'm not stupid. But if people act different on the other side of the line, maybe that influences the animals or something. Mommy says that we're all connected, people, animals, the earth, everything. I can't wait to meet the people and animals on the other side of the borderline. Siri. Mommy and Daddy are acting even weirder than usual. I noticed it the minute they got to my camp. Daddy's hyper intense 1 minute and all spacey the next, and I keep catching Mommy watching me when she thinks I'm not looking. Plus they took my screen away and won't let me use it without permission. I wonder if they know about me and Michael. They're worried about something, that's for sure. I'm excited about finally getting to cross the border. None of my friends have ever been to a different country. The border station has a building that looks just like a little white house, but inside there's all this tech, big screens and mini scanners and complicated controls. When I try to look past the house into Quebec, the air looks all hazy and weird. Is it a distortion field or just the rain? The woman who's the border person is very pretty, and Daddy's giving her one of those smiles of his. Maybe he's feeling less worried now, or maybe his face just does those smiles automatically. Mommy doesn't seem to mind, though. She's even holding his hand. Maybe Daddy's nervous about the border crossing, though I don't know why. It's not like we're doing anything illegal, like smuggling stims or plotting terrorism or something. Janie. The first thing I notice is that the border guard looks about 22 years old, max. I find myself staring at her hair, an unnatural shade of reddish purple. Interesting, kind of. I must be nervous, paying attention to bullshit like hair. The important thing is that she seems nice, not suspicious or anally bureaucratic or power crazy, although the niceness could simply be a way of catching us off guard. Lake is standing there smiling and comfortably conversing with her in French. If you didn't know him like I do, you'd think he was enjoying himself, maybe even flirting. But there are certain telltale signs. Something about the juxtaposition of his relaxed pose and warm smile with a hyper-alert look in his eyes and the way he's gripping the seat of his bike. I take his hand and hold on tight. I can't understand what they're saying. I thought I might be able to catch some of it at least. There are similarities with Spanish, though if we're not talking about El Pueblo Unido, I'm pretty lost in Spanish too. I did study some French vocabulary in the hospital, but nothing sounds familiar. I try to listen more carefully, but what I hear is something like "Uska vu la la la." Yet when Lake speaks, I can follow what he's saying a little bit. I guess it's mostly the accent. I can tell that Lake's trying to mimic hers, but his vowels don't sound quite right, more like they're leaning in that direction. Lake is looking at me expectantly, so I hand the woman Siri's screen, where I've beamed our eco travel passes. I don't want to appear nervous, so I look up at an image of a round globe, hands reaching across it to clasp one another in a symbol of international solidarity. This is the first time I've seen this image somewhere other than at a demonstration, where it's usually a harbinger of increased police presence, as though the idea of abolishing borders were a direct threat to the state, which in a way I suppose it is. Seeing this particular image at this particular international border should be reassuring. Perhaps it's the irony of it, or perhaps it's just the way it's associated in my memory with police violence and repression. But either way, the sight of this flag makes my heart race and my stomach clench. I'm not sure if its presence here is a good or bad sign.
Thank you.